Hi Danielle, thank you for joining me this afternoon. How are you?
Hi Sophie, I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you coping with everything at the moment?
Oh, I think it's like everyone, we sort of have our good weeks and our bad weeks, or
Yeah.
just, but I think, yeah, hanging in there. So
Excellent, good to hear. So today you're joining me for an interview. We're going to talk about your book, The Ardent Witness. So we thought we'd talk about yourself and the book and get to know you a little bit better. So really simple question, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
so I am originally from Sterling Heights, Michigan. It's a little suburb of Detroit. So I went to Wayne State University and I studied journalism, and I worked in journalism for a little while I was there. I wrote for music, sort of like a local music magazine, talking to musicians and sort of like local cultural figures. And so that was, and then I went into news radio for a little while, and then I decided to join the US Peace Corps, and I went to Togo, West Africa, and I spent 2 years as a community health and AIDS prevention worker in a remote rural village in the northwest of the country. And then I came to London and I started studying international relations, and I met my husband and I stayed. So I've been in London, for about, it's been like 7 years now. So yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. How did you end up joining the Peace Corps? Like, you're doing so many different things. How did that kind of come into view?
Well, I kind of I went into journalism because I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't think that I could sort of make a living as a novelist, but it's also very difficult to make a living as a journalist. So it's kind of like, I sort of decided that I wanted to do something where, I could travel and do something, to try to make a difference, do something positive. So I decided that was kind of my pivot into the world of international aid and charity work. So it's a very long process to apply for the Peace Corps. It takes about a year. You have to go through, like medical checks and the application process, interviews and everything. So I think because it's a 2-year commitment, they try to make sure that you really want to do it. You're very serious.
Yeah.
So it gives you a lot of time to think about, what you're committing yourself to. But
yeah, and I imagine there's a lot of pressure to make sure they're sending over the right kind of people and like you say, committed people who actually want to do this, and they don't just see it as some random opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like just a, sort of like a 6-month kind of thing, and so it's more of a commitment. So definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, it sounds really impressive. You've definitely had a range of adventures yourself in all different types of areas. So when did you first start writing The Ardent Witness, and did you always hope that you'd publish a novel?
I always wanted to write a novel. I didn't think I would use my experiences in Togo as the inspiration. That I didn't think that would be like the story that I told. I don't know why. It seems kind of naive to think that now. But like I started writing it actually because I had moved to London, and it was, it's a very different place, London, to go from, a small village in West Africa to London. And it was quite I don't know, it was difficult. Like I missed my home that I had made there, sort of. And I kind of started writing about things just because I wanted to remember. It was sort of just like therapeutic for me to think about those experiences. But I think then at the same time, I might be preempting some of your other questions here, but talking about sort of the inspiration behind the novel. At the same time, I was also studying at the School of Oriental and African Studies, and I was studying international relations and taking international economics and sort of studying a lot of these sort of dependency theory and neo-colonial policies that are still in place. And I could really relate all of that to my experiences in Togo. And so it was, I really felt like it was incredible how so many international development work ignores the factors, these factors, and kind of emphasizes individual responsibility. And so that was kind of like the inspiration behind trying to frame that in a more human sort of story.
there is always, with everything, there always seems to be a focus on individual responsibility rather than big corporate or country responsibility.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I mean, I think that's because of the way that like poverty is framed in the West, especially. It's sort of treated like it's either a result of, you know, individual responsibility, corrupt governments, or just kind of like some unfortunate accident that the people in the global South are living in the most impoverished places on the planet. And it ignores the legacy of colonialism and the fact that, you know, there are really real tangible policies that are in place that perpetuate debt and inequality. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think that it sort of serves like our purpose to sort of ignore these things because it gives people coming from a privileged background an excuse not to examine our privilege. So I think, you know, that's one of the main themes of the novel. So
excellent. So I know you've already mentioned it a little bit, but you just tell us a little bit more about the Ardent Witness. You've obviously covered that it's about your experiences.
Yeah, so I mean, it's based on my experiences in Togo, West Africa, and tells the story of Lily, who's the protagonist, and she is a community aid worker in a rural village, and it's kind of like an examination of privilege and the impact that has on the contradictions of international development work. So it's a coming of age story, basically, I think. But yeah.
Excellent. So you've mentioned privilege a couple of times, so it does seem to be like quite a big theme in the book that you explore, and I think it's a good thing to explore. I think a lot of us forget, like you say, we forget our privileges because we aren't on the other end. We don't know what we could be missing or could, you know, not experiencing. So I do think it's important to tackle those issues. What was your writing process like?
I think so. Basically, I kind of got through a draft, and then, well, I think the key is to sort of like keep going. I think for a long time, when I was trying to write, it would be like you would just focus on kind of getting like one chapter or one part of it sort of perfect. But then when you continue writing, you might scrap that whole chapter altogether. So it's like, I think one of the key things that I learned in writing this book was just to keep going, like finish the draft, you know, like however many drafts it takes, just get through it. And then you go back and start again. And sort of like, because I think I do kind of make outlines and notes and things, but a lot of times when I'm actually writing, it gets thrown out the window. So I don't spend too much time on that kind of, you know, plotting and planning. And yeah, so because I think that most important thing is just keep writing, and finish the draft. And then, you know, you can revise it the next time. So I think I started writing this in like early 2014, and I finished it in 2018, I think. So yeah.
So a long time writing, but as you said, some of the hardest things that our authors talk about, and you just mentioned, is just finishing it, because you're too busy trying to tweak it all the other points and make it way, and then go back over it. And I imagine that had an impact as well, because you told me recently that it started as a spiral sort of publication, and then it kind of evolved into this fiction novel with elements of your experiences, but less of an autobiography and more of a fiction with truths in there. Can you kind of explore why you think it went that way? What drew you in that direction?
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with sort of what I mentioned before about, you know, what I was studying at the time. And I think that I was kind of sort of like drowning in academic theory, but I wanted to sort of like, I think because of my experiences in Togo, I felt like the human aspect of things got lost in that. So I kind of wanted to explore a way I could take what I was learning and to make it into more of a sort of rounded picture, you know, with more human aspects to it, it's not just like theorizing, you know, economics and policy and you know, like the human side of it. So
bring it down to the compassion and the empathy rather than numbers and
exactly. Yeah.
I think we do, again, as talking about we forget that they are people and that this has an impact on their actual lives, not just statistics and their policies and ideas. It's people's livelihoods and existence.
Exactly. Like, I think, you know, when you're in the academic side of things, there's like kind of a very large disconnect between, you know, theory and practicality. And I think that's, you know, that's in essence one of the biggest problems with international development work that I've experienced is, you know, a lot of these ideas of programs are being thought up in offices in New York or London, and then when you get to the actual places, it's not.
They don't integrate this.
Exactly.
Great idea, but it doesn't work in practice.
Yeah, and so it's kind of trying to show that in a novel form.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's a good way to do it. Was it strange to write about another country? Did this present you with any particular challenges you weren't expecting?
I think that, you know, I think that it's funny because I think there's a quote, I think it's Hemingway, that said, you know, in order to see a place clearly, you have to leave it. And I think that there is a lot of truth to that. So I was in London and I was thinking about my experiences there, and it does take a different sort of shape, a different form. But also, you know, I was also very nervous about like doing, you know, honoring the people and the places that sort of inspired this story. And I, you know, didn't want to sort of like fall into any kind of like Orientalist kind of tropes of like fetishizing the otherness, and, you know, like I just kind of, doing, you know, honoring that experience and
yeah. Sometimes people, like you say, I think fetishize is a good word to use. Sometimes when you read books of other countries, we either discredit them and make them sound like they're incapable and they need us for everything, or we make them sound like this perfect utopia of a day of they're beautiful, and like it's not realistic and it's very untrue and unfair for the actual country.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's like something, you know, I was very aware of and trying not to sort of like I said, you know, cliches and that kind of
It's I imagine it's a difficult challenge, but definitely worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I hope I did all right.
I enjoyed the book, so I'm sure you have. Other than the challenge of writing in another country, was there any other challenges just generally in writing and publishing that you hadn't expected? I know you said you've done journalism, but actually publishing a book, I think, is a very different sort of creature. So were there any challenges you weren't expecting there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because it's just you have to be in it for the long haul, I think, and it's kind of sort of overwhelming. It can feel overwhelming at times because you set yourself such a big task, and you just have, I think, you know, with writing, it's like you have so many days where it's like, okay, you have a week where everything goes really well and you're like, I've got it all figured out, I see where this is going, and then you have another week where you're like, oh my god, this is crap, like I don't know what I'm doing, and, you know, it's I don't know, will I ever finish this kind of. And I think it's just the challenge of sort of like persevering and like I said before, just kind of finishing it. I think you have to kind of like let go of expectations of, I didn't really know if I would ever publish this novel. You know, like I didn't know, like, I mean, obviously, like I hoped I would, but I didn't know if, you know, and I think you have to sort of like just do it anyways and not worry too much about like what happens after. So I think it's kind of like letting go of expectations is one of the biggest challenges, but probably the best way to go about it.
Definitely. I was talking to Bethany, one of our authors, the other day, and she gives advice on writing and teaches creative writing and things. And one of the things she was saying was that people need to let go of this idea that part of the challenge is submitting your book for publication, and it may get rejected. It may get rejected 100 times, but the fact is you've submitted it 100 times, and that's a great achievement. So I think a lot of writers do fear that aspect of publishing, but it's not necessarily a reflection on your skills as a writer. A lot of the time it can be due down to the fact the publishing houses you're giving them to don't use that genre or it doesn't suit their style.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of you, if you're not writing for a specific market, or, you know, it's hard to sort of find your place in different places. So yeah, definitely.
So slightly away from your writing and your own publishing experiences, who's your sort of favorite genre?
That's such a hard question. Yeah, I think my favorite genre, I love like fiction, you know, I that's what I like to read. But it's so hard to say. I think if I had to pick a book or write it, like a book that specifically influenced me, probably both like as a writer and a person, I've returned to this book several times, is The Idiot by Dostoevsky. I just think it's just, I don't know, it's just such a wonderful sort of like examination of, you know, what it is to just be authentically yourself, and to be, you know, he doesn't shy away from like the big moral questions of our time. And I think so much of it is still relevant in how, you know, kindness can be misinterpreted as being sort of foolish. But in the end, it's such a wonderful book. Like, it's, I think, my favorite and probably the most influential on me all around. So.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I think I might have to. So it's called The Idiot, did you say?
Yes, yeah.
Just scribble that down myself. I like all genres, and I'll read fiction and non-fiction, but I definitely like books that kind of look at the human condition, like the kindness
exactly
is represented.
Yeah.
I'll give it a read and let you know what I think.
Yes, I highly recommend it.
So what's next for you? Are there any more novels on the horizon?
Well, I'm actually at that like horrible new beginning phase of like trying to work on a manuscript. I think the lockdown has kind of provided me with a bit more time. So I'm trying to make use of it, which isn't always easy. So, you know, because I think we're dealing with so many things, you know, it's like hard to get into that headspace sometimes. But I've tried to begin, and I think that I'm not rushing myself. I'm taking my time, and I'm sort of figuring out the story and what I'm trying to say. And I had a writing tutor sort of give some advice. She's a novelist, and she teaches a poetry class that I'm a part of. And she kind of said, I was telling her about, you know, starting another novel, and she's written a couple herself. And she said, one of the hardest things is you expect to be where you were at when you finished the last book. And you're not. It's a different process. You know, you're starting again from the beginning. So it's kind of just sort of being patient with yourself, and, you know, just like I said, just keep going. So
I imagine it's a lot like having learned a skill, and then you're like, well, I'm just going to transfer this skill, but it's not the same. It's a brand new skill you're now learning because you're writing a brand new thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's
I can imagine it's frustrating.
Yeah. It's just, you know, one day, it's like I said, it's kind of like you're all over the place. So
yeah. So this is a slightly different question, and I've asked all of our authors this, just because I want to know what you guys feel of it, and to kind of get, I'm kind of trying to spread the word of bibliodiversity as well. So as you know, our company ethos is bibliodiversity. So really, my question is, what does bibliodiversity mean to you?
Do you know, so I had not come across this phrase before I met Consuelo and was introduced to Victorina Press. But after I looked at your website, I remember I ordered Susan Hawthorne's book on the Manifesto of Bibliodiversity, and I was really like, it's like, wow, this is like everything that I believe in. And and it was just so exciting to find a publisher who, you know, sort of understood the importance of featuring voices that, you know, don't fit into sort of the mainstream publishing industry. And, you know, I think it's just so important because, especially in the times that we live in right now, everything is so divided. And I think that literature is kind of like our window into other worlds. And it makes us more compassionate when we hear, you know, stories from people who are not like us or who come from different places. And you know, that's how we sort of connect. Yeah. And, you know, and I think it's just so important. And I said before, you know, when I found Victorina Press, I didn't find a publisher, like I found a movement. So, you know, I just think it's just, yeah, it's incredible what you guys do. I think it's really great. Like,
thank you. I think you touched there on something very important, and I've spoken about this with other people recently, and it's this idea that it's stories. People's stories are what allows us to connect. You have facts and statistics, and you think about it academically, you lose that human connection, and it becomes very dispassionate, or you disassociated. But when you want people to understand genuine situations, and like we're talking about, you know, the Western neighbours that should be, but when you see every time when you listen to human story, then you can understand that there's something not, you know, there's something missing from that connection.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think that's why literature, the arts are just so important, because they bridge that sort of that divide, that gap. And, you know, I think that's why it's so important that you guys are doing what you're doing. And, you know, really thank you for that. So, yeah.
We're very happy to do this. It's very important. I just say it's very, very important to Consuelo, and I believe in it as well, and everybody here does. It's close to our hearts. So thank you very much for this wonderful interview. I really enjoyed chatting to you. It's been really insightful. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. And for anybody watching this video, if you have any extra questions or you'd like to find out more, do visit our website, send us an email. Maybe we'll do another interview again of questions. And if you would like to find out more about her publication, again, please visit our website. Don't forget to like, share and comment this video. And I will see you.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you.